Oral questions.
Oral questions. Questions orales. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, City Next Minister Canada, Pierre Poilievre.
This weekend in Cloverdale, 15,000 people lined up in the pouring rain for the hopes that they might get a few rejected potatoes. It was Ugly Potato Day in that city. And 15,000 British Columbians are too hungry and desperate that they needed to go and collect those rejected foodstuffs. 2 million Canadians are lined up at food banks. Wow. There are 1,400 homeless encampments in Ontario today. And what is the Prime Minister doing? Working to save his political skin from his revolting caucus. This can't go on. Will he call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I would really hope that every single MP in this House would agree that in our great country, no one should ever go hungry. But when Conservatives talk about the most vulnerable,
there should be no but.
Crying crocodile tears. And how do I know that, Mr. Speaker? I know that because they have had the gall to vote against a national school food program, a program that will feed 400,000 Canadian kids. How can they look themselves in the face when they oppose feeding Canadian kids?
Yes, that's right.
Man, what the hell is wrong with this lady?
The opposition.
That program, though it has costed millions, has not fed a single hungry child. It has fed bureaucracy, which is all it ever was intended to do. Meanwhile, 2 million people are lined up at food banks. We've got 15,000 people that will line up for a, quote, ugly potato because they can't afford to eat. We have diseases like scurvy that are back. And 1 in 4 kids go to school hungry after 9 years of this Prime Minister, yet his priority is saving his political career from his revolting caucus. This cannot go on. Will he call a carbon tax election today?
Yeah.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are damning themselves with their own words. I was at a school in downtown Winnipeg on Friday. I was there with Premier Wab Kinew, and we gave those beautiful, wonderful children some bannock, a little carton of milk.
Hey, I've had bannock.
Some butter and a banana. That was not bureaucracy that fed those kids. That was the deal we've done with Manitoba. The Conservatives are against feeding kids.
So you're a better person because you fed people bannock?
The Honourable.
That's like a pretty racist thing to say.
Leader of the Opposition.
Are you kidding me? She says that the Canadians should be happy that while 1 in 4 kids go to school hungry, while 2 million people line up at food banks, while scurvy is making a comeback after 9 years of this government, Canadians should be grateful that she showed up with a few snacks and a photo op at one school. Mr. Speaker, this is the same finance minister who's blown back $7 billion past her deficit target, meaning more inflation and higher rates. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister hides in the fetal position under his desk. Will he...
Put some W's in the chat. Oh, mon Dieu, tout fini.
Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, she's so triggered.
Knocked the Leader of the Opposition off his game this because how can he have the temerity to talk about actual meals fed to actual children as bureaucracy? That tells you how cynical and how low these Canadians go. And then he talks about inflation. Mr. Speaker, it's been in the Bank of Canada's target range for 9 months in a row. It fell below 2% in September, and rates have come down 3 times. That's what's happening with inflation, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, she got her ass handed to her. Oh, that was brutal.
From Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, country first, party second. According to the RCMP, union government,
the Conservatives are laughing.
Rise Canadians. The Conservatives are laughing about this, but people have died as a result, and
you're an idiot.
In our politics, the Prime Minister has said that there are multiple Conservative MPs and/or candidates compromised.
Release the names.
Sitting in the chamber right now. But the
Release the names then.
chooses ignorance. Has the Prime Minister directly urged the leader of the Conservatives to get his security clearance?
If endangering their lives is a byproduct of releasing the names, then they should have thought about that beforehand. Wouldn't you agree?
Question. We've been clear. We think all party leaders in this House should have the required security clearance so they can receive information concerning the threats to this House or the threats to Canada involving foreign interference. We also take the comments of leader of the NDP very seriously with respect to protecting Sikh Canadians and protecting those who've been victims of this foreign interference by the government of India. My responsibility as Public Safety Minister is to ensure the safety of all Canadians, and that's exactly what we're going to continue to do.
Release the names. You can't commit treason and be protected by government. That's insane.
First, party second. I dare the Conservatives to laugh again. I see they're not. They're quiet.
Wow, what are you going to do? Try and fight them?
Is willing to turn a blind eye to
Jagmeet
crimes
is like
committed
a bully
against Canadians. Every of this House must condemn India's interference, and there must be consequences for parliamentarians who contribute to it. Did the Prime Minister directly urge the Conservative leader to apply for his security clearance? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was very clear. We fundamentally believe that all party leaders in this House must have their security clearance appropriately so they can learn what is needed to manage their parliamentary caucuses and understand the threats that Canadians are facing. And I applaud fully the feelings of the NDP leader in terms of condemning the government of India's interference, and I congratulate the work of the RCMP for their work, and I know that the investigation underway will prove to be trustworthy.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, it seems that no part of Canadian life is safe from the Finance Minister's radical tax rampage. Not food, not home, not gas, and not even music. In response to new streaming taxes from this government, Spotify just announced that they're raising subscription fees by 15%. Even the simple things like kicking back and listening to your playlist isn't immune from this greedy government. When will the Finance Minister wake up, face the music, and finally admit that her new taxes and spending are not worth the cost?
Yeah, man.
The Honourable Minister for Heritage.
Mr. Speaker,
come on.
Again, are making the talking points.
For those that don't know, in
platforms
Canada,
that are making millions in Canada's
because we have
Canada
two
have done
official
so for
languages,
years.
you can
Like all Canadian
opt
companies, they
to
contribute
answer
to our system, but this
in
is not the
whichever
first
language
time
you would like.
that they've raised their
Some people,
subscriber prices. This time,
like this woman,
when it comes to
always
helping our
speak
Canadian
in French.
artists, the Conservatives speak out against it. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not really surprised once again that they're in the pockets of these digital giants.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Their hands are in the pockets of average Canadians. The Finance Minister told Canadians to cut Disney Plus, and she's probably going to tell them to cut their Spotify subscriptions too. They say that the taxes will fix climate change in the economy. They say that paying more taxes is going to lead Canadians to be better off, and all while they talk down to people. The carbon tax is up. The streaming tax is up. Capital gains taxes are up. And the Finance Minister missed her target by 17%.
Yeah.
When
Good correction.
that she has failed, axe the taxes, and let Canadians live their lives without their hands in Canadians' pockets.
There you go. Less government, more freedoms. Like, this is insane. Canada is stupid now. Oh, it's not even Freeland answering.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Mr. Speaker, we on this side of the House actually have a plan for a prosperous economic future for this country. The Conservatives, who continue...
And it all comes at your expense, Canada.
...change, have a plan that leads backwards, not forwards. We are ensuring that things like the $12 billion Dow plant in Alberta is getting built, the $7 billion Jansen potash mine, electric vehicle and battery plants, hydrogen facilities in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador. We have a plan for a future that is a great and prosperous future. They have no plan.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Here are the consequences of the NDP Liberal plan. A new report shows that 35% of Alberta families are skipping meals because of high food costs. And yet, the Liberals and NDP tell Canadians they've never had it so good. But I'd like to remind the Prime Minister that his own parliamentary budget officer confirmed that Canadians are worse off paying the carbon tax. In fact, when the NDP Liberals quadruple the carbon tax, it will cost Alberta families $2,000 a year. Will the NDP Liberals just finally admit their carbon tax is a scam and call a carbon tax election?
Man, the cost of everything is skyrocketing. It doesn't make any sense.
Children and social development.
On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we continue to fight for Canadian families. How do we do that, Mr. Speaker? One way is the Canada Child Benefit, Mr. Speaker. Families with children under the age of 6 can receive almost $7,800 each and every year per child, Mr. Speaker. This is tangible support that arrives each and every month to help families afford the basics or whatever their child needs. This is how we fight on this side for Canadian families,
Dude,
Mr. Speaker.
the child benefit is cancelled out by how much the average person pays into the carbon
I'd like to give
tax.
the minister some actual facts of what real Canadian families are facing. Fact, 35% of Alberta families are skipping meals because of high food costs. Fact, food bank usage in Mississauga is up 60%. Fact, doctors are warning about scurvy because Canadians can't afford nutritious food. Fact, food inflation in Canada is 37% higher than the United States. Fact, their own parliamentary budget officer admitted and confirmed the carbon tax is all pain, no gain. Fact, the NDP Liberal government can end the pain they're inflicting on Canadians if they call a carbon tax election. Will they do it?
Pretty simple.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, cutting a check that low-income Canadians are getting, the vast majority of them, over 80%, are getting more than they pay, is not going to fix an issue like scurvy. What's going to fix scurvy is certainly not cutting our health system. It's not getting rid of diabetes medication or getting rid of free dental care. It's not attacking the foundations of our health system, just as we're working with provinces and territories on solutions. Mr. Speaker, what is going to get it done in a time of global uncertainty is collaboration and working together, not nonsense slogans.
Hear, hear.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, Canadians are worse off. The effects of his deficits, his inflation, and his carbon tax hikes have been devastating. A new report by the Angus Reid Institute says that a majority of Canadians are struggling just to be able to buy food. And of course, that's even worse for low-income households, with 2/3 of those Canadians saying they can't even afford to feed their families. Yeah. One way to lower food prices would be to axe the carbon tax on the farmer who grows the food, the trucker who ships the food, and the grocer who sells the food. The Prime Minister could do that today. Yeah. Will he show some compassion, lower food prices, and just axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every day we see the Conservatives get up in this House and tell mistruths. 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back than they pay in the price on pollution. Of course, it is no surprise when you hear what their closest friends and allies have to say. Danielle Smith believes planes are spraying chemtrails. Jess Crosby says climate change is bogus. And John Rustad says fighting climate change is a plot to reduce the human population and force people to eat bugs. Mr. Speaker, they say you can tell a lot about people from the company they keep. Well, Mr. Speaker, you certainly can.
They literally are trying to switch protein to bug protein, though. What the hell?
Although the Honourable Minister did not make reference to a particular member, I encourage all members, please, to skate further away from the line, especially in regards to using that word. The Honourable Member. The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
Obviously, the carbon tax scheme isn't making Canadians better off. Otherwise, 2/3 of low-income Canadians wouldn't be reporting that they can't afford to pay for groceries, and they wouldn't be lining up at food banks or waiting hours to get rejected potatoes. The Parliamentary Budget Office, the government's own watchdog, has concluded that when you factor in all the costs of the carbon tax, and remember, Canadians don't get to pick and choose which costs they pay, when you factor it all in, after they're done quadrupling the carbon tax, a family in Ontario will be $1,400 poorer. New Brunswick, $1,000 poorer. Saskatchewan, $2,000 poorer. So why not let the people decide in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, the Parliamentary Budget Officer and 300 economists across this country have said that 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back, and it works directly inverse to income. By taking away the price on pollution, you will actually make the most vulnerable more vulnerable. The Leader of the Opposition and his caucus know that, but certainly...
The Chair is having some difficulty hearing the answer of the Honourable Member. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister to start from the top. I'm going to ask all members, please, I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Foothills, please, to not speak when not recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But we know that the Conservative Party of Canada actually doesn't believe in the reality of climate change, nor do they have a plan for the economic future. They are no different from Mr. Rustad, who has endorsed the Leader of the Opposition, who says we should not be trying to fight climate change.
I don't think they're supposed to be talking about provincial matters at the federal level like that.
And many other candidates have essentially said we do not need to fight climate change. Well, Canadians know that climate change is real. Canadians know you need a plan for the future of the economy, and that is what is on this side of the House. Shame on you.